Well, welcome everybody. We're getting ready to get started, and we're going to talk about effective claims tracking. And this section is going to be talking about report examples. There's so much information we've talked about in the past on the previous webinars. This one is going to focus on the reports themselves, and there's some key points that I think are critical before we even start taking a look at reports. Part of it is, what is the strategy for your reports? What do you want to get across? And I think too often we provide too much information, and what we need to do is create a nutshell. So here's some of the cliches that you end up hearing. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Take the emotion out of the process. Attack the numbers, not the people. We get ourselves in trouble when we start focusing on somebody not doing a good job. It's a lot easier to look at black and white numbers. The black and white numbers make it a lot easier. The facts, just the facts. Again, black and white, put the numbers in front of everybody. They'll know exactly what's going on. Just hand a single sheet to management. What we have found in the past is that management is too busy. If you start trying to give them a ream of paper or a big story or a big explanation, they typically don't have time. And so as a result, they don't devote the time and the effort to it. You need their commitment. And without their commitment, you're not going to be able to get the word across to all the department heads and supervisors, and especially the employees that need to hear this information. Distribute reports directly by email rather than making them available. And the key here is to make sure that they get their reports on a routine, regular basis rather than having to retrieve them themselves. If they do, it's going to be hit and miss. They're not going to get it. This way they just find it in their email stream and they've got the information there for them. And then distribute the monthly, the specific schedule. If you've got the information available, you send it out every month, same day. This way they know to expect it. It's a routine, and they have confidence that they're going to get it every month. The key ends up being communicating with management. And as you're communicating with management, there are 4 parts of management that you're going to want to report to. One is risk management. Another one is operations directly. A third one is finance. And the last one is safety. And we're going to kind of cut down the reports into those 4 categories so that they will get that snapshot and information and make it easier for them to do. Don't make it harder for them to do. So let's focus on risk management. And the first report that comes up is the Consolidated Loss Run. This is the basis of everything else we're going to talk about in the future. And if you noticed, on the top left-hand corner, I've got some columns circled. The first one has to do with the location, but also has to do with the types of coverages. So as you go down that column, you're going to see workers' comp circled, auto liability, and general liability. And the key here is we're combining everything for that location together, and then we'll run separate totals. But we're able to put all the lines of coverage into a single report. And if you go to the second column, you'll notice that starts with claims number. As you go down that column, you're seeing all the TPAs. I don't care if it's SRS, ESIS, RISCO, CAS, Gallagher-Bassett, whoever it is, we combine those into a single report. Again, simplifying the process and making it work. And the third column across the top talks about the status, whether it's open, closed, whatever. Now let's move over towards the right-hand side of the form, and you're going to see that OS, which is outstanding reserving, and you can see that there's a reserving amount, there's total incurred, which is circled, and then later on I'm going to come back to the retentions and the current liability. But for risk management, you've got a lot of key information that's made available. Okay, let's talk a little bit about operations. Operations always wants to know what is going on? How are we doing? How are we doing compared to last year? Are we doing better? And so that's what they're always going to end up having to talk to their supervisors about, and all the way up on the chain of command. They want to know what the trends are. So here's some examples. Once we've done that consolidated, now we can go back and start producing the variations of reports. In this particular case, this is taking the last 12 months of reports and comparing it to the prior 12 months of reports. And it gives you a real quick snapshot. If you look at the bottom right-hand column where I've got it circled, you can see that they have a 34 reduction in claims and a reduction in cost of over $800,000, and then 20 claims in their auto side with a $300,000 reduction in cost. So again, one-page snapshot. They know exactly where they are, and they get the report. They don't need a story. They don't need they'll come back to you if they've got a specific location that they're concerned about or information that they particularly need. Here's another example of doing a year-to-date analysis starting in the beginning of the year, and in this particular case, they're doing 12 months, but it might only be 9 months. And so you do 9 months of last year compared to 9 months of this year, and as a result, you're going to have the grand totals and variances as you're looking at that particular report as well. Here we've got the consolidated claims trending. So now we're going over multiple years. We're going to take the same type of information, and we're going to say over 5 years, for example, how are we making progress? Are we doing better than we did 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? Is location A doing better than location B? Who is showing the best trends and the best process? The more we're able to give, again, that snapshot, the easier it is for management to respond and look at specific locations that needs to be focused. And as a result, we're going to see better outcomes, I think, in the long run. Here's one of the key reports that we have found that has worked very well, and it's a little bit complicated, so I'm going to spend a little time on it explaining it, but this pretty much neutralizes the locations because of size. Some locations are larger than others. Some locations have more claims than others. But as a result, they also have the trends. And you always get the excuses from the big operations that they're saying, well, we've got more people, and as a result, that's the only reason we have more claims. What we're doing is taking 4 key factors. So if you look at the top left-hand corner again, where it is, where we have the circle, we're identifying number of employees per location, the hours worked, total number of claims, and the cost of claims. And with those 4 key pieces of information, we can take that data and we can come up with, if you go further to your right, an average claim cost, and then we can take a look at the claims per population. We can look at the cost per employee and continue to work out an average claim cost and then rank each one of those characteristics. So as a result, at the end of the day, all the locations are ranked based on how well they're doing. Let me tell you a story. We had a location that we were at 2 years ago, and they were just acquired, so they were being folded into the rest of the operation. And as we were out to that location talking with safety and HR and management, we kept getting told how important safety is. It's the most important thing that is going on in their operation. It's the key to their safety. They're concerned about their employees all the time, and as a result, they want to make sure that we know how important safety is. And we say, that's great. We'd love to see that. So we folded them into the reports that we produce. In this particular case, they have 20 locations throughout the company. This new location that came on board, believe it or not, came in dead last on the first set of reports. So we didn't have to go to them and say, you're not doing a good job. It was much easier just to give them the report. They see themselves where they are, as well as everybody else. It makes it pretty easy to identify doing a good job or not doing a good job. I don't have to argue with them. We just need to pick a game plan to try and get them to do or to get better outcomes. Same thing is true in this particular case. It's the exact same report, except that we're tracking all the auto claims. So once again, we're looking at key factors. Need to know number of vehicles per location, miles driven, total number of claims, and the claim cost. If we know that, once again, we can get an average claim cost. We can know, based against the number of vehicles, claims per vehicle, and the cost per vehicle, and the same thing on the miles driven. Claims per million miles driven, and the cost per million miles driven. And the more we're able to do that, we're able to rank them, and as a result, then start showing which ones are actually, in a sense, doing a better job. Again, a snapshot. That snapshot out there doesn't require you having to complain. You're just putting information out to the field. One of the things we've also found is that finance has been a big advantage as well. The company is tracking liabilities, and so this is the consolidated loss run that we showed you last time. And if we're going to focus on the last three columns to your right, across the top, that starts with the total incurred, the retentions, and then the current liability. If you look at this particular report, the key here is you need to know what the retentions are. The retentions change. They change by line of coverage. They change by policy year. So as a result, they're not always the same, which means that the company liability changes constantly based on where they have their retentions. So as you can see here, we've got a variety. If you look at the retention column, workers' comp for 1 year was $500,000, and then you go down to the auto liability claim, which is the fourth one down, and we're at $1 million, and the general liability is $1 million. So as a result, if you look at what's in your outstanding reserving and compare that against your retention, you know what your current liability is. Your current liability is basically any outstanding reserve below the retention. So there's a calculation required because there might be cases where the total value of the claim runs above the retention, but doesn't necessarily mean that you've picked up all that liability as well. So that ends up being a key point as we're looking forward. So with that piece of information now, we can provide the finance department with some key information that will allow them to manage their claims appropriately. And when I say we, I'm talking about something that is easily done within your own operation as you're moving your numbers forward and providing it to management. And in this case, Director of Finance, Controllers, CFO. The next report talks about the development of those claims. Development analysis identifies a claim, how old it is, and based on actuarial studies, what the future value of those claims are. And the more we can understand the future value, that helps the finance department, again, identify those things that are going to be critically important for them to book for their balance sheet and for their P&Ls as they're trying to track their overall liability moving forward. The next report, again, talks about the liability, but it looks at it in a different nutshell. So we've got prior month compared to the current month and looking at the totals company-wide based on the total number of claims and identifying the total liability to the company. So as a result, they're able to take a quick snapshot of how are we doing, how we did compared to last month. Again, not having to go through these Excel spreadsheets, but actually just have a report that is produced that gives them the information that they need to see. The next one, and again, these are just quick examples of total liability by location, by line of coverage, with grand totals on the bottom. So you've got a column for workers' comp that has the total incurred, what was paid, paid and the developed balance, and then by line of coverage through auto, general liability, and then grand totals as well, and then a grand total on the bottom. And again, the key here is to just give them a one-page snapshot, gives them the information that they need. This next report is a budget analysis. In a particular case, we've got a client that is focusing on budgeting how much they're going to charge to a location for either a work comp or an auto claim. So as a result, tracking claims by month, number of claims against a budget, allows them to charge that cost to the location each month up to a certain dollar value, and they're able to kind of manage that accordingly. It gets a little complicated, but quite honestly, it helps them because those are getting charged back to the location for what they want. This next report takes that total paid and incurred and identifies how much has been paid, what the total incurred is by policy year for all their specific lines of coverage. You can see the lines of coverage on the left-hand column, and you can see the incurred and paid by location across the top. It helps them get a summary of their grand totals, and through audit and analysis, they're going to be able to track and manage that piece as well. No one wants to be surprised, and on this weekly reserve change comparison, this is a report that takes all the TPAs, all the total incurred, and gives them a weekly report every Friday, lets them know what claims have changed by a certain variance. Typically, it's around $15,000, but it could be $10,000 or $20,000 or $25,000. They want to know if any claim changed value by more than $15,000 in a given week compared to the prior week, either up or down. Either it was increased or it was decreased, but they wanted to know the totals, and so as a result, they get a no-surprise report, I refer to it as, where they know exactly what the numbers look like and how those numbers will total. So as a result, they can go back to the adjuster and identify what needs to be changed, what caused the change, what's going on. Again, no surprises. And then this last one for the finance group is the liability by year. How many claims are still open by year, by line of coverage for workers' comp and auto? And again, this talks about liability, so this is the value of the claim, what's outstanding reserve underneath the retention. And the more you know that information, again, it's easy number for them. Snapshot gives them that information that they need to follow up and look at their processes accordingly. Okay, let's talk a little bit about safety. And again, all these departments, they kind of run into each other. So there's a lot of the reports that are being shared with multiple departments, but the original focus was on the department that we talked about. One of the other things is graphs. And graphs are a great snapshot of what is taking place. In this particular case, we give you an example of bodily injury, number of claims by month. And why this is important, this shows a trend or a seasonality. Certain businesses do more business certain times of the year, and what they're going to see is a trend certain times of the year. In this particular case, they seem to be peaking in July, August, September, October, and except for that one peak in 2011 in May, the majority of the claim sits in those 4 or 5 months. So knowing that bit of information, you're able to put a strategy in place to make that work. Now, that in this particular case, we're talking about number of claims or bodily injury. It could be causation. It could be body parts. There's a number of things that could be looked at. This is just to give you an example. In the same regard, we can look at the cost of claims. for those same time period, and the cost of claims obviously has a lot to do with what's taking place. Realizing the severity of claim, one bad claim can make a big difference. So as a result, you're going to find that we end up having a lot of trending, and it allows us to put some strategies in place or go back to the location and ask for them to come up with a strategy that they're going to be working on as well. Well, that was a lot of information in a very short period of time, so it gives you a chance to digest, go back, take a look at, or certainly ask any questions. I think we want to take a look at if there's any questions that came up, and I've got one here that we got. It says it looks like a lot of work to get to the reports. Scott, I'm going to since you're the technical guy, I'm going to let you answer a little bit of that.
Sure. So I think one thing to take into account is all these reports have not been built at the same time in one shot. So, what you're looking at is a portfolio of reports that we've developed over a period of time based on customer requirements or customer requests. So, I wouldn't expect to build something quite this complicated in one shot. Now, the other thing to think about is some of these reports are a little bit more complex than others. In the cases where we're talking about the development or we're talking about the retentions, the liabilities, you're going to have to take that into account when you build your system to add that kind of information in lookup tables so you're able to get that information based off of coverages, based off of time frames, things of that nature. What I would recommend for those that haven't had a chance to see some of our previous web conferences, take a look at our last one, effective claims tracking. You can look it up on YouTube. Just do a search for effective claims tracking, and you'll see our previous conferences. But we have a video on consolidating the information. And to me, that is the absolute most critical piece to start the entire process. You want to have a way to get this information, get all the information you need. And now that you've seen some examples of some additional reports, it can help you realize some of the things that you might want to make sure that you get for that information. Start with that and get yourself a clean loss run. And I would recommend a loss run report like we've shown, and we also have a loss run export that's just a spreadsheet so you can actually manipulate the data. We've seen that customers really want kind of both options. Get those completed. Get those clean. Make sure the data, you have confidence in that data, because as you build these additional reports as you move forward, you're going to want to be able to compare that information to what you consider to be your gold standard. So if you can at least start with getting a clean loss run report, I think everything kind of moves forward from there, and you'll get more information from clients and from your own wishes to see the additional types of reports you want to build. But just realize that you're not going to build all this at one time. You're going to be building this as you get more ideas and as more requests come in. And it's really a process to kind of put a portfolio together of these reports.
Okay, thanks, Scott. To stay on time and make sure that we're done on time, we're getting ready to end the conference. I appreciate everybody's participation. And certainly we left our numbers and our email address. If you have any other questions, certainly contact us, and we'll be getting back in touch with you about future webinars and programs that we're going to be putting in place. With all that, we will sign off and tell you all good luck.